Chapter 4, Lesson 8, Quadratic Inequalities. So this is going to be a little more standard inequalities. Tomorrow is going to be a little bit more difficult, okay? Um, so graphing quadratic inequalities in two variables. So if the quadratic equation is in standard form, use your graphing calculator, or you can use Desmos to make a sketch of the parabola, okay? If the quadratic's in vertex form, obviously we don't really need the calculator or Desmos to make a quick sketch. Just like before, if it's less than or greater than, we're using that dotted line. And if it is less than, equal to, greater than, equal to, we're using that solid line to graph. And then we're going to shade. Our shading either goes inside the U or outside the U. Okay, so above that or below that. And so let's take a look here at a couple examples. So we have our graphing our inequality here. So y greater than equal to x squared plus 5x plus 6. So again, if we're doing this all by hand, we need to find all this information, but we can use, in this case, we can use Desmos to help us get a quick sketch. So let's jump over to Desmos here and let's take a look here. So we plug that in, x squared plus 5x plus 6 gives us a nice little graph, quick graph. We can see some solid points here. Negative 2.5, negative 0.25, that vertex point. You can see y-intercept here is 6, even x-intercepts negative 2 and negative 3. So those are the points I want on that graph. Okay, so go back to my graph, and let's put those points on there. So negative 2, negative 3, negative 2, negative 3 on those points, negative 2.5, 1.5, or I'm sorry, quarter, negative 1, negative 2.5, and negative 0.25 or negative 1/4. Y-intercept was 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is my point here. Again, we can also bring in that axis of symmetry information that we know about. So here's my axis of symmetry, my line. And again, I can just count over. So from my y-intercept, it's 2.5. If I go 2.5, here's my another point. So now I've got a bunch of points on here to sketch this graph. So we can draw a little sketch of this graph. Okay. So it is greater than or equal to, so we're going to use a solid line. Okay. Solid line. And then where do I need to shade? Well, y is greater than. So here's my y. Greater than would be inside this graph. Again, if you're not sure, you can always pick points and plug in. So what if I picked, so let's say I'm not sure where I want to graph, but let's say, well, if I pick this point right here, 0, 0, really easy point to plug in. Okay, I'm not sure where to plug in. Plug in zeros. 0 squared plus 5 times 0 plus 6. So again, 0 greater than equal to 6? No. So it's not. So I'm not shading in that spot. I'm going to shade inside that parabola. Okay? So you can see just by standard form, we can easily get vertex here, which was negative 2.5, negative 0.25. Okay? We could easily find that y-intercept here, right? There's my y-intercept. Okay, I found it with the graph, but you can easily find that y-intercept. Okay, we found some x-intercepts, right? So x values. So x's in this case were negative 3 and negative 2. So those were points on my graph. Okay, so use that information that we know we can get from the graph and make a sketch and then shade above and below to finalize our equation. Let's take a look at one more. So find the graph of the inequality. So let me get rid of this. So again, it's in vertex form. So I don't really have to plug it in. I can get a lot of that information here. So my vertex, -3, -5. Again, looking here, h and k, right? Y-intercept, if I plug that 0 in, so 0 here. Again, you don't necessarily have to write it all out. You can just kind of do it in your head if you want to. So 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 5 is 4. So -3, -5. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my vertex. Y-intercept is at 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. A value. A value is 1. So if you guys remember, when A value is 1, what's my movements? First movement, over 1, up 1. Over 1, up 1, 2, 3. There's my movements. I can go the other direction. Over 1, up 1. Over 1, up 3. 1, 2, 3. Again, I could also use that axis of symmetry line. Here's my axis of symmetry. So everything gets reflected across that line. So again, if I have my y-intercept here, it's 3 spots away from the axis of symmetry. I'm going to go 3 spots, put my point. There's my graph. I got all these points now. Again, it's still greater than or equal to. So solid line again. Okay. And again, if I look at that graph, I put my pencil anywhere on that graph. If I look at my vertex, where are my y's greater than? So greater than would be up above here. Again, I can also plug in that 0, 0, okay, and see what happens here, okay? So my shading is going to be inside this U again. Again, you don't have to color it all the way in. You can kind of just make some solid lines, okay? So if you're just using a pencil, okay, you don't have to shade the whole thing in. You can easily just put some lines on there showing where you're shading, okay? That's good enough. Graphing inequalities, quadratic inequalities, okay? Solve them by graphing. Again, if it's just greater than or less than, dotted line. If it has the equal to with it, we get that solid line, then shading inside that U, outside that U, based off of that symbol. All right, day 1.